All right, welcome to the Tuesday, December 9th, 2025 regular closed session meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Director Chan is absent and excused. Could you do roll call, Madam Secretary?
Director Gomez,
Here.
Director Katz,
Here.
Director Lewis,
Here.
Director Odie,
I'm here.
Director Smith,
Present.
President Young.
I'm here. Okay. Are there any members of the public online to speak on agenda or non-agenda items?
No online public comment?
Okay. I do have one blue card. Eric Larson. Think you know the drill. Good morning.
Good morning, President Young and board members, General Manager Chan. My name is Eric Larson. I'm President AFSCME Local 444. I have concerns today about an orientation manual that has resulted in a notice of intent to terminate two of our meter reader mechanics for allegedly estimating a meter read on a fire service. Each of the two meter reader mechanics are alleged to have done the same violation on the same type of service. The fire service is a meter that typically has no use. The notice of intent to terminate refers to a meter reader orientation manual, which was never negotiated with the union, that states that estimates are prohibited. And if estimates are found, the meter reader mechanic will be terminated. This is clearly a term and condition of employment and a mandatory subject of bargaining, and furthermore constitutes a new element of discipline under Procedure 223, gross misconduct, which would be a firing offense. And it requires an update to Procedure 223 and your approval. HR says the violation is already covered under 223 for, quote, dishonesty, including deliberate deception, intentionally giving false information, and intentionally falsifying records. So that's what these guys are actually accused of. They've made simple mistakes. They made simple data entry mistakes in their device while they're trying to read 600 meters in a day. They made data entry mistakes while keying in the data on their handheld device on routes with over 600 meters, up to 600 meters, that they had to read in a day, and in fact inadvertently carried forward estimates that the district did. Because the district at the end of 2024 had to estimate 20,000 meters because there were 10 meter reader mechanics that were out on job injuries. And there weren't enough meter reader mechanics to read all the meters in the service territory at the end of the year. So the district estimated 20,000 meters and then wrote notice of intent to terminate 2 meter reader mechanics for estimating 1 fire service. Something is wrong with that whole chain of logic. There's a culture of fear in that department, which I think is inconsistent with what I've seen the board exemplify, and it's inconsistent with the district values. Local 444 is working with the department to address the safety issues, but the managers need to address the supervisor's behavior, and this goes up the chain of command because there are managers who signed the notice of intent to terminate and approved the orientation manual that underlies the notice of intent without appropriate notification to the union or to you. So I'm asking you to please provide direction to staff to address the orientation manual, to provide proper notification to the union about the orientation manual and the terms in the orientation manual. And if we demand to bargain, like what is the definition of estimating? I don't even know what the definition of estimating is.
Eric, you're about a minute over.
Okay. I'll stop there. Thanks for your time and your consideration to this matter.
Okay, if there are no other public comments, we will move to convene the rest of our closed session in conference room 8 and return for our regular scheduled meeting at 1:15 PM. Thank you. Are you ready? All right. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 9th, regular meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Director April Chan is absent and excused. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Gomez?
Here.
Director Katz?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Odie?
Here.
Director Smith?
Present.
President Young?
I'm here. Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start with the presentation.
Yes.
Mr. General Manager?
Thank you, President Young. So this year, East Bay Mud released H2 Flow, a musical collaboration with the Grammy and Emmy-winning Alphabet Rockers to celebrate World Water Day and inspire young audiences to learn how we deliver safe, reliable water. The music video has earned more than 182,000 views on YouTube, demonstrating the power of creative storytelling to elevate water education and community engagement. Last week, H2 Flow received the 2025 Association of Clean Water Agencies, or California Water Agencies, Kuehl-Hauser Award for Excellence in Communication Award, a statewide honor recognizing outstanding achievements by public water agencies. The award highlights projects that innovatively and measurably meet public information, communications, or outreach goals while making effective use of available resources. This honor comes on the heels of another major milestone. H2 Flow won the California Association of Public Information Officials Star Award earlier this fall, further underscoring the campaign's impact and success. Staff representatives accepting the award are Catherine Horn, Senior Community Affairs Representative, Christine Byrne, Community Affairs Representative 3, and Tracy Morales, Public Information Representative 3. And President Young, you have the award to share.
I do. Come on up. I think I should know this by
They're usually on the other end of the
now. I
line.
am so proud of East Bay Mud's accomplishment in this, and Tracy getting the Alphabet Rockers, and Christine taking it out to the kids, and Catherine to the community. So I'm very happy to present this. You will want to know that H2 Flow has made it onto my granddaughter's playlist with Golden. So, that's pretty good. She asked today whether or not the TK class at her school will get to have the presentation. Thank you all. Just great job. Great job. Okey doke. We'll now move on to, there are no announcements from closed session. We'll now move on to public comment. First, Madam Secretary, are there any, if you're online and wish to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Do we have any commenters online?
No online public comment?
I have no cards. Anyone else in the public who wishes to comment on non-agenda items? Okay, we'll now go on to committee reports. And the ones we have up today, the minutes for the November 25th Sustainability Committee and the December 1st Special Finance Administration Committee meetings were provided in the agenda materials. If we could now get an update from we had this morning's planning committee, and then we also had another special finance administration committee meeting. So Director Lewis, could you give, I guess you're on tap for both reports.
Yes, I am.
If you could give the planning committee report and then the special finance administration committee report.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. The planning committee met today and we discussed or received a report regarding the wastewater interceptor master plan. I want to say it was a very, very interesting report and we accepted that. We also received a records retention schedule update, which was very thorough. And that was the extent of the planning committee report. The Special Finance Administration Committee also met, and I'd like to note special thanks to Directors Katz and Odie. The Finance Committee had some initial or additional questions regarding one of the matters that came up, and we wanted to make sure we had a thorough understanding and decided to have an additional meeting prior to the board meeting. So thank you for their time and commitment. On December 1, the committee received updates on employee reimbursements of at least $100 regarding or consistent with AB 1542 through June 30th of 2025. Fiscal year 2025 audited financial statements from the external auditors, and kudos to the staff for not only receiving an exceptional audit, but special mention was made about how cooperative and professional the staff was and to work with. We received an annual internal audit report from the internal auditor, a report on the Strategic Insurance Program Initiative. It's a proposed East Bay Mud captive insurance company, and that was the topic of the additional meeting this morning. I will come back to that at the end of this report. We received direction on policy 4.29 regarding the use of artificial intelligence. We continue to work on that. And then there was lengthy discussion regarding fleet vehicle and equipment telematics. I want to note with regard to the Strategic Insurance Program Initiative that the staff came back having answered additional questions from this committee. And in response to that presentation, the Finance Committee not only accepted the report, but we moved to accept the report with an advisement that the boards also adopt the recommendation. I think that's the end of my report.
Okay, and then we'll have a report on the DERWA meeting that happened, yes? Last night, from Director Gomez.
Thank you. So DERWA met last night, and during the meeting, we accepted the independent auditor's report for fiscal year ending in June 30th. There were no findings. We also approved an amendment to fiscal year 25-26 operating and capital budget. There was a recommendation to increase the amount by $25,000, and all the member agencies are contributing toward that in order to complete a project that was bid higher than expected. We also received the authority manager update, including the fact that we've been anticipating a long-term agreement with Central Sanitary District, and my understanding is that we're getting close, and sometime hopefully in February of next year, by the time we meet again, we may have an agreement to celebrate. That's it for DERWA. Oh, and the next meeting is February 2nd of 26.
Okay. We will now move on to the consent calendar. The board would like to pull item 12 for a presentation prior to determination on that. Are there any other requests from board members to pull other consent items for further consideration?
Just also want to note that at your places is the updated meeting minutes.
Oh, okay, right.
And the meeting minutes were revised to note a correct vote on the item to remove Director Chan as vice president. And so the votes were corrected for the final meeting minutes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so hearing none, we'll take a motion for for items 1 to 11 and item 13.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Director Gomez, seconded by Director Odie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. And item 12, which is the, what are we calling it? The independent, what's it called? We need a better
East Bay
name.
Mud Captive, so
The East Bay Mud Captive just doesn't sound,
Vladimir, you have to work on that.
Right.
So we have Vladimir Basarboff here with a brief presentation to give you a background on the captive. And I don't know if Director Lewis, did you want to add anything before Vladimir begins?
I do. On behalf of the Finance Committee, we wanted to give you all a little background. That is, everyone knows if you live in California, we are very challenged with providing insurance. Not only providing insurance, just getting insurance. And if you can get insurance, can you get so in a reasonable fashion for reasonable cost? We are very happy and proud to say that East Bay Mud has an enviable record when it comes to losses. So you would think we'd be the kind of company that would not be having to go through the same problems others do to secure insurance. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So our staff has been thinking not only out of the box, but in a fashion that ensures that East Bay Mud continues to be protected at a significant level, and that we are able to continue as an ongoing concern, fully covered. This is a presentation that talks about East Bay Mud having a captive insurance company to help us with cost and coverage. The Finance Committee, as I mentioned during my report earlier, has been exhaustive. We asked several questions. We've had 2 meetings, and we're very comfortable with the proposed program. I do want to note, there was also some time sensitivity, which is why we also decided to meet again in order to make a recommendation to the board to make sure that we can pursue this as a program and do so timely as it relates to our upcoming round of insurance. Is that a helpful background for the audience?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And Vladimir, please begin.
Good afternoon. Today I will present the proposal to establish an East Bay Mud-owned captive insurance company. The name is up for discussion, and we can name it however you would like. This structure is designed to improve long-term premium stability, give East Bay Mud more control over our coverages, and reduce our reliance on an increasingly volatile commercial insurance marketplace. East Bay Mud currently structures its excess liability. Oh, 1 second. Okay, thank you. East Bay Mud currently structures its excess liability coverage in layers. We self-insure the first 10 million of every claim. Commercial insurers provide additional layers above that, up to $100 million. The cost of each higher layer heavily depends on the cost of preceding layer, and this is very important, and I can explain more on why it's important. Also, another very important factor is that coverage is determined by the first insurance layer. This model has served us reasonably well for many years. However, we are increasingly operating in a market where commercial premiums are rising significantly, coverage terms becoming narrower, and there is less predictability year to year. Premiums are no longer being driven by our excellent claims record. They're driven by insurance market pressures outside of East Bay Mud's control. Next, please. Over the past several years, East Bay Mud excess liability program has become more difficult to place and significantly more expensive. Some key facts. The commercial market for public agencies is contracting. There are fewer carriers who are willing to underwrite in California. They want higher prices, and there are significantly more restrictions related to coverage. Our premiums have risen 77% in the last 2 years alone. we're now seeing exclusions for major risks. Just to name the few, in the last 2 years, we have seen exclusions related to employment practices liability being excluded from the general liability policy, and PFAS, or also known as forever chemical exclusion. This is happening despite our very strong record of no external insurance claims for decades and strong operational safety. Because pricing is determined by the industry rather than our own performance, this leads to year-to-year unpredictability and sometimes double-digit swings. We analyzed multiple strategic responses to this environment, including maintaining status quo and continuing to purchase insurance as we have, increasing our self-insured retention from $10 million to a higher number, for example, $15 or $20 million, switching to bare or fully uninsured approach taken by some public agencies, for example, City and County of San Francisco, or establishing EBMUD captive insurance company. Each of these options helps us in different ways, but only the captive solution addresses the core problem. We do not currently control the drivers of price and coverage in the traditional insurance market. And for example, if we were to increase our self-insured retention, we would still have a problem of locating insurance carriers who are willing to provide terms and conditions and coverages that the district desires. That first layer is very, very crucial for us, and it dictates the layers throughout the full $90 million tower. So if the terms and conditions are overly restrictive or unacceptable to the district or have gaps in coverage, that would translate through the entire tower to have the same gaps and exclusions for the entire $100 million of coverage. So what is a captive? A captive is a separate insurance company created and owned by an organization to insure its own risks. Captives are not experimental. As we have seen in a previous slide, there are more than 6,000 operational captives in US, including many public agencies, such as California Joint Power Insurance Authority, Association of California Water Agencies, or ACWA, California State Association of Counties. The County of Los Angeles is currently in the process of forming its captive, and our friends at Las Vegas Valley Water has had a operational captive for a number of years. Captive allows its parent direct control of coverage, terms, and claims handling, retention of underwriting profit rather than sending it to commercial insurers. In other words, premiums that aren't used for claims are retained as reserves, strengthening the financial position year after year. A captive would reduce reliance on the commercial insurance market and allow its parent to use commercial coverage as a supplementary tool rather than its sole option. Another very important factor about captives that I will mention later on is that it provides district with direct access to markets that are currently not available to us, and those are global reinsurance markets. That's where insurance companies buy their insurance for catastrophic losses. Those markets are only accessible to licensed insurance companies that would be this captive. The risks associated with captives are mostly higher than expected losses, and we believe that this is manageable through actuarial modeling, phased implementation that we're recommending here, and proper planning. We are recommending the board to authorize forming a single-parent captive fully owned by EBMUD. Oh, I'm sorry. This represents a visual representation of a different structure, our traditional or current structure that we currently have and the proposed captive. Ultimately, the captive would sit right above the $10 million self-insured retention and would take on $5 million in risk initially. We would continue to place the rest of the coverages with traditional marketplace, as well as starting to explore global markets as well as reinsurance markets. Next, please. As I mentioned, we're recommending okay, I'm a little bit lost. Oh, can we go one slide back, please? I believe they are. Okay. We covered this one. If you don't mind moving on to the next one. Thank you. This slide summarizes annual funding requirements required for the captive. A few key points that I wanted to point out here. Blue rows represent funds set aside to pay claims. If claims are not incurred, these funds will remain as captive reserves, controlled by EBMUD. Actuarial modeling shows that even under conservative assumptions, the captive builds surplus above required capital level. And we will cover a little bit more on what the surplus is expected to look like on the next slide. In practical terms, by setting aside premium dollars into our own insurance entity, we redirect funds that would otherwise leave EBMUD permanently, and instead, we use them to build long-term financial strength. Over time, surplus reserves could fund expanded coverage into new areas, for example, taking on an additional layer in our excess liability policy. It could be used for currently uninsured risks. It could be used for other coverages down the road. For example, if we wanted to take a position in our property coverage, we could do that through our captive. We could utilize it for employee benefit resources as well. Some mature captives use it for medical stop-loss coverage and other healthcare-related benefits. We could also fund tools to reduce future claims. Or the surplus funds could be returned to EBMUD. Next, please. There is an important financial truth here. Captives often cost slightly more in the first 1 to 2 years, but then they generate greater long-term stability and savings for its parent. The numbers support that after 10 years, the captive is projected to have approximately $6.6 million in equity, assuming that the losses are as expected. In the simplest terms, money we currently send to insurers and never see again is instead retained and accumulated under EBMUD's control. This is the core financial advantage of forming the captive. The proposed captive structure includes strong controls, including a 5-member board of directors. We recommend that the board would consist of 4 EBMUD representatives and 1 Utah resident board member as required by law. Oversight would be conducted by the Utah Department of Insurance, which is a mature regulator with low operating costs. Annually, there would be actuarial reviews conducted, audits, and we recommend and strongly suggest reporting back to either the Finance Admin Committee or the full EBMUD Board of Directors on performance, direction, and financial status. Importantly, the EBMUD board positions would be unpaid roles. They would be governed by EBMUD ethics policies, and this would ensure transparency, accountability, and cost efficiency. One other thing that I wanted to point out, the reason why Utah was chosen as one of the potential places that the captive would be established in is that Utah does not require physical travel for the board members. Most other states require at least an annual board meeting to be held in their jurisdiction. With Utah, they allow for the board meetings to be held via Teams or Zoom. Next, please. The benefits to the district include, as I mentioned, access to new markets, premium stability, reducing budget shocks, broader or customized coverage, including risks that the market is now excluding, reserve growth, which can strengthen the balance sheet or reduce future premium costs, long-term independence from volatile commercial markets. Ultimately, this supports our mission of prudent financial management and strong stewardship of public resources. To summarize, the insurance market is becoming more expensive and less supportive of the district needs. EBMUD has maintained an exemplary record, but market pricing does not reward us for it. A captive insurance company offers access to new wholesale reinsurance markets, financial stability, greater control, and long-term cost savings. We're proposing a phased approach with limited initial exposure, funding from savings already in the budget, and a regulated insurance company wholly owned by East Bay Municipal Utility District. This is a major step towards long-term financial stability and coverage flexibility for the district. Next, please. If the board is supportive, we will request your authorization to form a single-parent captive domiciled in Utah, commit funding of $1.39 million in fiscal year '26 and $1.8 million annually for fiscal years '27 through '31, and include similar funding as needed in future budget through fiscal year 2031. Authorize staff to designate 4 EBMUD representatives to serve on the captive board, and authorize staff to submit the business plan and license application to the Utah Department of Insurance. Next, please. Thank you for your time and consideration. I am happy to answer any questions from the board.
Luz?
Thank you, Vladimir. Excellent presentation. I also want to thank General Manager Chan for all the answers that he provided ahead of today for questions I had previously. So I think I may be answering my own question, but it sounds like because we would be domiciled in Utah, that the California Department of Insurance would have absolutely nothing to do with regulating us. Is that true?
We would be regulated by the Utah Department of Insurance, but the captive would have dual legal responsibility. So first and foremost, when the captive is established, there will be a contract, a binding contract between EBMUD and captive. And in that contract, we can choose the venue, and we propose that it would be subject to California law and California courts. Ultimately, when it comes to the governing law, the Utah law will govern operations of the captive and regulatory standing. But California law will govern the insurance policy and the contractual relationship between EBMUD and the captive.
Okay, that's helpful. And then, let's say in the future, Utah decides to change their rules in a way that would not be favorable to us any longer. Would we be able to pick up and move the captive elsewhere?
Yes, it would be subject to the regulatory approval of the new domiciled state, but absolutely, it is something that is possible.
Thank you.
Other questions I had? I think one other question. In terms of the Utah-based board member, what would be our plan for recruiting that person? And are there criteria that we want to apply? And, is there an expectation of payment for the service of that board member?
So we have identified 2 possible approaches on identifying and selecting the Utah board member. First approach is we could utilize professionals who are involved in a captive marketplace. There are attorneys and providers that provide those types of services. We understand that the typical compensation for a board member would range between $4,000 and $6,000 a year. There are certainly qualifications for that. So one of the requirements from the licensing in Utah is that there is a biographical affidavit for each director that is submitted along with the application. And they would like to see that the individuals who are nominated have background in finance, legal, insurance, or reinsurance. So it cannot be just someone off the street. The second approach that we're possibly exploring is reaching out to our sister public agencies, potentially water agencies in Utah, and discussing it with them to see if we can find someone with the background in risk insurance or finance who would be willing to serve on our board.
Okay. And then the other question I had is the 5 million a magic number, or is there some other, I mean, what was the rationale behind selecting that, that next tranche as being the amount for the captive?
There were multiple iterations. The initial thought was to take our whole self-insured retention of 10 million and put it in the captive. However, the capital requirements associated with taking such a big step, because it would be basically from $0 to the 10 million, were very significant. So we decided to start slow, put the first layer, that is the most important layer, into the captive. And then as we grow and develop the captive and build up the surplus reserves, we can look at potentially adding additional layers. So for example, if the board wanted to take a layer, let's say from a 90 to $100 million, because we felt that this would be a safe bet, given that we haven't had any claims of that extent, and currently the premiums are basically going to insurance carriers and we never see them again. If the board decided that this would be a good enough risk and recommended it to the captive board, if we had surplus and the regulators approved it, we could take that layer and place it into a captive as well. We could also take a position in our property program. So for example, right now it's on a cost share basis with multiple carriers. If the district wanted to take a position and, for example, accept 10% of this quota share, so to insure all of our properties 10%, and retain the profits that would otherwise be going to a carrier, we could do that as well. Or we could venture into new areas. For example, terrorism coverage is something that we currently fully self-insured for. But if we wanted to look for commercial products or reinsurance products for that, we could do that through captive once the captive builds the surplus.
Okay, thank you.
I might also add, the Finance Committee had requested, if the board approves forming the captive, that we come back early next year to provide information on the cost for the captive, just as a comparator. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to compare, like what could we have gotten, had we gone the commercial route. But just to get a sense of the cost, the committee had also asked for us to come back to bring more details on the policy on how reserves are managed. So because reserves are managed by the captive board, but this board, the East Bay MUD board, can dictate by a policy some of those policies in the captive board. So again, if the board approves this, we'll come back to the committee first with additional information on those two items.
In fact, the Finance Committee is asked to be continually informed and updated as we go through this process, and that we're committed to keeping the board likewise informed.
And one last comment would be how important it is that when we talk about this and we're messaging about this, that our customers realize that we're doing this ultimately to save ratepayer funds, that we are doing it to be judicious with our finances.
Well, to
Not-
better manage our risks and to lower costs.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's the primary goal of what drove us to recommend this as well. And we're also trying to preempt some of the things that we think are going to be happening in California marketplace related to excess liability coverage. Specifically, we believe that there will be more exclusions forthcoming, especially given the ongoing litigation against LADWP related to wildfires. So we're trying to preempt that and prepare ourselves to access other markets with significantly more options and better competition related to pricing. So we are preparing ourselves to avoid potential shocks to our ratepayers as well as to our financial systems.
So when you come back, and assuming we approve this, when you come back in January, can you come back with some name suggestions?
Different name other than captive.
Maybe we could ask public
could
We could have a little contest.
We have a little contest, exactly.
Need a motion.
Well, I do want to acknowledge the industry standard, and if the captive name is the recognizable standard that a reinsurance entity would need to look to, we should prioritize, being able to recruit a reinsurance carrier.
Name hyphen a captive insurance company of.
With a little blue heart.
While maintaining a mechanism for good public communications in those events.
I move that the board,
And if you could just hang on 1 minute, let me get Director Odie to come back in. He said,
Oh,
okay.
somehow didn't notice that he left.
Yeah, he told Risha something that
I'd like to move that the board adopt the proposed East Bay Mud Captive Insurance Company plan, and that we authorize them to proceed forward with the aforementioned guidance to respond back to an update, keep the Finance Committee informed.
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Lewis, seconded by Director Katz. All those in favor? Aye. 6-0, motion passes. Thank you for all the work on this, and it's a big deal, and it seems like it's moved very expeditiously, but thoroughly as well.
thank you, Vladimir. Next, we have Kathy Viatella here to discuss the state legislative priorities for 2026.
All right. Thank you to General Manager Chan. Good afternoon, President Young and members of the board. I'm bringing to you today the state legislative priorities for 2026, which represent the focus areas for East Bay MUD that are likely to come before the California legislature next year. There are 5 priorities in your board report and a specific proposal for sponsored legislation for your consideration. So I'm going to walk through each of the priority areas and the sponsored legislation, and I will pause after each one for questions, and then at the end, I'll bring it back to you for your consideration. So let's start with the proposal for East Bay MUD sponsored legislation. This is a subject that we have discussed in past board meetings, and we're recommending that the district sponsor a bill that would require cities and counties to get a water supply assessment from the local water supplier for any proposed large development project as defined in the water code, no matter whether the project has to go through CEQA or not. The water supply assessment is a foundational piece of California water law that resulted from 2 East Bay MUD sponsored bills in 1995 and 2001, and those were referred as the Show Me the Water laws. The law fundamentally supports urban water planning by requiring a water supply analysis before a new large project can proceed. And it also creates an opportunity for a water supplier to talk with a developer early on in the project development process so that the developer can understand any needed infrastructure upgrades and explore options like recycled water and conservation for their project. As we discussed at previous board meetings, the legislature over the years has sought to expedite housing projects by removing regulatory barriers and streamlining CEQA processes for certain types of projects. And as you may remember, AB 130, a budget trailer bill passed this year, created a CEQA exemption for projects on 20 acres or less. Because these projects no longer have to go through CEQA, cities and counties do not have to request a water supply assessment from the water supplier. So if the board, if the board decides to approve this recommendation to sponsor legislation, I want to emphasize that we would not seek to rescind the CEQA exemption for housing projects on 20 acres or less. Our aim is simply to reinstate the requirement for cities and counties to request a water supply assessment for large development projects as they are defined in the Water Code. So I'll stop there in case you have any questions.
Do we want to take action on the entire
That is up
agenda or point by point?
Your choice. Your choice on how you want to handle that.
Does anybody have a preference?
I think it would be good to take questions and discussion one by one, and after resolving our interests, have one motion for the whole package.
Okay, I would like to request that we try to be somewhat expeditious in our doing that. But yeah, that's fine. So are there questions or additional guidance on the Show Me the Water reboot?
So I noticed in the high-level summary, it says residential, commercial, and
multi-use.
multi-use. So is that intended to include like an industrial use? Is that incorporated in commercial?
They're all defined in that commercial, in that part of the Water Code. It includes industrial use and
Okay.
commercial.
That's helpful, thanks. Just wanted to, we might be, it's an unsettled issue whether advanced manufacturing incorporates things that could use heavy amounts of water, and whether that's commercial is something that I wasn't familiar with the linked definition for. Thank you.
Okay,
Any other questions?
this is a good one.
Okay, I'm going to move on to housing. So beyond tackling the regulatory hurdles to building housing, the legislature has really zeroed in on the big issue of housing affordability. They've been looking at how to bring down the costs for developers so that more affordable housing can get built. And that's been their sort of hypothesis. So a lot of that conversation has centered on putting limits on water and wastewater capacity charges and connection fees, and on pushing back the point in time when developers have to pay those fees. Lawmakers have also started paying closer attention to how long it takes to review and approve building permits and utility service applications, as well as how long it takes to get new housing projects connected and up and running. So in 2025, and this year, there were active discussions about streamlining land use permitting rules and application processes to speed up housing approvals and construction. And those discussions often happened without a good understanding of the role of and impacts to special districts, which differ from cities and counties that have land use authority. So we expect these conversations will continue in 2026, and we'll be looking for practical ways to protect and support the district's interest if new legislation is introduced, whether it aims to eliminate our capacity and water and wastewater capacity charges and fees, and also if new project approval requirements that are unrealistic or burdensome, or if they seek to make changes to local land use or permitting rules that could negatively affect the district. So any questions about this topic area?
This is basically an opportunistic and reactive proposal, right? We're not looking to sponsor any particular
correct.
language. We would be reacting to
Correct.
things
So,
that
yeah.
will undoubtedly unfold or may unfold in the legislature.
Correct. We're only proposing to sponsor one piece of legislation dealing with the water supply assessments. These are specifically topic areas, and this is one of the 5 that we've seen historically come up in the past, and we expect it to continue because of the focus on housing affordability. So we would identify if there was any legislation introduced, and we would review that and bring it to the board as appropriate for your consideration, if it was burdensome or had a negative impact to the district.
Andy?
Sometimes when we're in conversations, we're floating positions, with the confidence of what it means to the district. And I think that's sometimes what we need to do to be proactive. But other times, when a bill has come across and you need to take a formal position, we have a process for that. Just expressing a view that we, certainly if the legislature were to move to exempt our rates and charges for service capacity charges, that would blow a big hole in our budget, that we would need to look to other sources likely increasing rates to be able to fill in the gap. It's really shifting a burden onto the general rate base. That I might think about that differently in a more holistic way when we think about just deferring the point that it's deposited. That I think there's a conversation to be had about as the legislature is looking for flexibility and thinking about the burdens of a developer that incurs up to 18% or even in the low 20s of financing costs. That's where I think they're coming from when it comes to the time of deposit, if it's being rolled into their construction loans. So I would suggest just being more metered about that type of thing in early conversations, not with any judgment about what you'll eventually bring to us. But that's, I see a very big difference between kind of the attempts to make a minor tweak and a minor alleviation on the burden with realistic financing about what it takes to develop housing compared to just completely shifting the burden and putting that back on us to solve a big hole. That wanted to explain that.
We'll take that into consideration.
Other questions on that one? Okay.
All right, so the next topic area is water affordability. And as affordability continues to be a major issue in both in California and nationally, we may once again see proposals this year to create a permanent water rate assistance program for low-income water and wastewater customers. As you know, there have been several past attempts, and those attempts have stalled because it's been hard to identify a stable permanent funding source or to even design a local funding approach that meets constitutional requirements under Proposition 218. So in 2025, this year, there were two bills on this issue, AB 532 and SB 350, that did not move forward, as we noted in last month's mid-session report. So even so, East Bay MUD and some other water agencies will continue to work with environmental justice groups if they decide to push for a statewide program. But it's unclear what specific bills, if any, will surface in 2026. So we'll continue to highlight the district's strong track record with our longstanding CAP program to help shape any future legislation and make sure the program can grow to benefit our customers and keep you updated on any new developments in this area. So any questions? All right. Moving on to topic number 3, which is water supply reliability. So we expect the California legislature and the administration will keep focusing on water supply reliability and environmental protection in 2026. And there really are 3 main areas that we want to keep an eye on. The first one relates to the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan, or as the alternative is called, the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes Program. As you know, the State Water Board update to the Water Quality Control Plan could affect East Bay MUD's water supply reliability and have impacts to the McCollum River fishery. And staff are continuing to stay engaged and advocate for the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program as an alternative approach to updating the plan. Last year, lawmakers, the administration tried to introduce language to streamline approval of HRL alternatives, and we may see similar proposals either from the administration or other stakeholders again this year. Because the state is going to face another budget deficit in 2026, the Legislative Analyst's Office is projecting an $18 billion deficit. The legislature may look to pull back unspent funds that are supposed to support early implementation projects in support of the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program. And those funds are really critical to making the program work. So we'll continue to monitor this area. The other area related to this topic is the golden mussel response. So we may see more legislation addressing the spread of the invasive golden mussels. In 2025, the Fish and Game Code was updated to require reservoir operators to monitor the reservoirs, and if mussels aren't detected, to develop plans to prevent their spread. That was in the Public Resources Trailer Bill that we supported. The state also allocated $20 million from the Prop 4 water bond to the Department of Fish and Wildlife towards the implementing statewide control program and increased the boater sticker fee to help fund grants for reservoir operators. What we may see is that the recreational boaters may push for statewide reciprocity programs to simplify the rules for inspection across various reservoir operator jurisdictions. So that could create some issues for us and we may have concerns. So we'll continue to monitor those discussions or any other discussions around seeking additional funding for addressing this problem. So any questions about gold mussel? Okay. And then water supply management and emerging industries. This also fits under water supply reliability and environmental protection. So water supply management and emerging industries. So lawmakers may look for ways to improve, again, water forecasting, overall supply management, including new water supplies like recycled water, and understanding water demand from emerging industries. So for example, there was a bill this year that would have required data centers to report their water use to local water suppliers, and some version of that concept and other related proposals may come back in 2026. So we're going to keep track of any potential legislation or budget actions in these issue areas and bring anything significant to the board for consideration. So any questions about these three sort of overall?
Director Gomez?
Just, I think it's covered under the water supply management umbrella, and I don't know if it's needed to specifically state something about artificial intelligence and the fact that we're going to keep track of any development that would have a nexus with us.
It's something we can keep track of.
Yeah.
We do track artificial intelligence bills. Okay, any further questions? All right. The next issue area is wildfire and emergency preparedness. So after the devastating LA wildfires, the legislature and the governor focused heavily on disaster recovery and wildfire preparedness and emergency management. And we expect this to continue to be a focus area in 2026, especially in two areas. The first one is emergency response and infrastructure investments. So there was a notable bill this year, AB 367, by Assemblymember Bennett, who is from Ventura County. That bill is now law, and it sets rules for water utilities in Ventura County to help with fire suppression, like having backup power or alternative water sources, doing annual inspections of critical fire suppression infrastructure, and notifying authorities if water deliveries drop. The author plans to push for similar measures statewide in 2026. And there are some concerns that those kinds of requirements may be too prescriptive and that the needs depend on your location and your geography. And so if that were to proceed and move forward, we would keep track of that, and if we had concerns, bring that to the board. The other area, of course, is in wildfire and forest resilience funding. And the legislature had allocated $600 million of the $1.5 billion climate bond funding toward wildfire and forest resilience. There could be opportunities in fiscal year 2026 and 27 in the budget for additional funding to support vegetation management, upcountry through our partnership with UMRA, and work in the East Bay Hills in collaboration with East Bay Regional Parks, the City of Berkeley, and UC Berkeley. So we'll monitor, like I said, for any legislation or budget proposals in this area and bring them to your attention if they may benefit the district or if they could be burdensome to the district. Is there any questions on this one? All right.
Yeah, I encourage particularly for each of the two areas, I think with the legislature considering, the tragic and catastrophic risks that are becoming more prominent in the state, that they want to do something, but they may not have the knowledge that we do about what's realistic, what's feasible. It certainly is not lost on me from reading some newspaper articles that totally got the reality wrong about what's feasible for a municipal system. There's a communication gap. So if there's legislation that would seek to impose a requirement, certainly it would make sense that there should be a mechanism for having some information in the right place if the legislature is determined to impose something. That may be an avenue, but hopefully we can ensure that they appreciate the realities of the infrastructure. On the vegetation management, I would encourage proactive cooperation with our regional partners in each respective region to proactively think about the kinds of budget control language or the types of grant set-asides, so that we are preemptively positioning ourselves through the legislation for the kinds of grants that we would like to foresee for our region. Not just the district itself, but taking our partners into consideration too, because the fire knows no boundaries.
Yeah, we'll do that. And in regard to your first point, we have done a lot of outreach and education on this issue with lawmakers, basically here in the district that are our delegation. And then I'm pleased to report that we've gotten the associations engaged in this issue as well, and they've been doing a good job of addressing those limitations as well, that we're really not in a position to fight these sort of large conflagrations at the wildland-urban interface. And as regard to the latter, we will do that. We will take a more proactive approach and continue to look for these opportunities, for the partnerships that we have. Okay, any other questions on this topic? Okay,
Why don't you ask the question, Valerie? This item is, for clarification, the item overall is the legislative initiatives that we'll take up for the coming session. It's not voting on particular.
So Mike, I just want a clarification, since we wanted to take the report on all of the legislation, since this was problematic. My question was just kind of procedural. When we vote to adopt a report, what are we going to be doing? That was the nature of my question.
We're voting on whether to adopt these as the initiatives of the district in the next legislative session. There's only one item where we would be looking to sponsor legislation, which is the Show Me the Water legislation to reinstitute the water supply.
So the Ventura County is basically for us to continue to follow it, given the significant concerns we might have.
Yeah, so, but Ventura, there was a bill enacted to make these things apply to water agencies in Ventura County, because they've had several very large fires and incidents. The author of this bill would like to expand that statewide. So we would engage if such a bill were introduced. Does that clarify?
My question really wasn't about your presentation. My question was just what it meant when we voted on all of the reports, and that, what it was we were actually voting on.
Really
Don't
just
worry
to,
about it.
it's just to take up, these are the topic areas that we will be investing resources and engagement in the session, and that as bills materialize, Kathy and her crew will be reporting to us and looking for guidance on what positions to take.
Correct. So,
Does that answer your, I must be missing something.
No, it kind of does, but given that one had already become
That's just,
law.
it was just an
Don't worry about
example.
it.
You could
I was-
exclude it from the report and just say,
No,
there's,
I'm not gonna
It's a
pull it.
bellwether about a harbinger of
Yeah,
what
it
could
was
be
just, it
coming.
was just
Yeah.
procedurally, what if I vote, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm-
okay, all right.
yeah. These are our best estimate of what we think are going to be issues next year that have a nexus with the district and our operations. And so I'm using examples from what happened this year and how that may roll into next year. And
Oh,
I,
my question has nothing to do with your report. It
Okay.
was- Don't worry
okay,
about it.
all right, pardon me then. So the last one, and then I'll make another, I'll summarize. The last topic area is on workforce development. This is new. We haven't had this last year, but in the past, we have identified this as one of the priorities that the legislature was focusing on. Workforce development is a key priority for the district, and in the past, the legislative and the administrative interest in this area has been on helping displaced oil and gas workers as part of building a green or clean economy workforce. And we saw that show up with budget actions that set aside significant funding for that particular area. The report goes through and provides a summary of those funding actions. And it included significant funding for workforce development, targeting oil and gas, displaced oil and gas workers, healthcare workers, and non-traditional apprenticeships. From that funding, there was some money that was set aside. It was $3.8 million in grants in 2024 to support displaced oil and gas workers in Contra Costa County. It went to the Contra Costa Workforce Development Board. But unfortunately, the state has reduced overall funding for this issue as part of budget balancing efforts. So, and the focus has really shifted to creation of career pathways for high school and college students, funding for existing state apprenticeship programs, and workforce development in LA and Ventura counties to support the wildfire recovery. So we will continue to monitor for any kind of budget proposals or windows of opportunity in this area if they open up, or if other outside stakeholders bring proposals forward. But for the moment, because we're going to go back into another budget deficit, which I mentioned being 18 billion, it is unlikely right now that they may set more funding aside for this, given those other priorities. Looking more broadly, the district, will continue collaborating with groups like Bayworks and associations such as CMUA that made workforce development priorities, and CMUA did receive some grant funding, which is wrapping up now. But again, they shifted the focus to replicating the Bayworks model in Southern California. So we have this in here as really a placeholder because I know this is such a priority for the district, and we will look for those windows of opportunity as they may present themselves in the coming year. So that completes my report on what are state legislative priorities for 2026. I'm happy to take any further questions. I would also like to make a comment. There may be things in here that are missing that you think are priorities for the district around environmental water quality, for example, and PFAS. That doesn't mean, we think because the last couple of years have tried to address that topic area, and they have been unsuccessful because of, again, budget considerations. We think there may not be as much of a focus on them this coming year. However, if they do appear, we will bring those things that have a nexus with the district to the board for consideration if there is some impact or we should support such legislation. So if it's not in here, that doesn't mean it's not something we're going to focus on. It just means this is our best estimate right now based on our conversations and what we've gone back and looked at historically.
I have one question, which given that this is the outbound year for Governor Newsom, and his fingerprints have weighed heavily on some of the things that have not gone through that many had hoped for. How do you see that playing out? Is that part of what quells the, probably aren't going to see another attempt on PFAS in that last year of his administration? Or do you have thoughts on that more generally?
Yeah, I think, it is the last year. We're going to start to see people making a transition and heads of agencies. Chuck Bonham just is announced he's departing Department of Fish and Wildlife and going to the Nature Conservancy. So all of that's kind of in the mix and how the administration weighs in. There are some things that I think that the governor had prioritized last year related to, or this year on water infrastructure. I don't know whether they're going to try to move that through. He doesn't have as much leverage, that being his last year. So I think that is unlikely. People may try to counter that with coming up with their own proposals and trying to put those forward and trying to press the administration to advance those. So we may see some of those things. And then issues that like PFAS, anything that comes with a fiscal impact on the budget, I think those run the risk of either being held in appropriations or being vetoed by the governor, which we saw this year, a number of those things. So I think that will continue even in his last year, the impacts to the budget, because unless they address some of those problems, these deficits are going to continue in future years, especially with the projections regarding the economy, which is anyone's guess at the moment.
Okay. Are there any public comments? Oh, did you have another question?
Really quickly, I know we're focusing on the state, and it would be either for you or Clifford to remind us about the federal landscape and if or when we might hear about.
We'll come back in January with the federal.
Yeah, we'll bring that back in January.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any members of the public for public comment?
No public comment?
Okay. then need a motion?
Move approval?
I'll second.
I'm going to give it to Joey. Moved by Director Katz, seconded by Director Smith. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0 with one absence. And we will, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Should be an interesting year coming up. Look forward to hearing more. And we will now move on to item 15, which is to consider the adoption of an ad hoc committee to develop guidelines for naming and renaming district facilities, programs, awards, and other district assets, and a specific proposal to honor former Director Bill Patterson.
Maybe, Derek, if I can just provide just some quick background. So certainly since the passing of former Director Bill Patterson, there's been discussion on how best to recognize his legacy, including renaming facilities and programs in his honor. And Director Patterson is certainly deserving of those type of honors, but it did raise an important question for the board to consider, specifically, what are the guidelines for someone to receive such an honor? So there are two actions for you to consider today. First is to appoint an ad hoc committee, as President Young talked about, to help us develop those guidelines. But second, we also feel as staff, given Director Patterson's tremendous contributions to the district and the community, that he would meet any guidelines developed. So Derry is also going to share with you as he fidgets with the camera.
There you are.
Also, some ideas and options that we have on how we can honor Director Patterson. I'll just say that these ideas came from some board members, from discussions with staff and employee groups. So really two actions today. One is to appoint an ad hoc committee, and one to consider options on how we can recognize Director Patterson. And Derry, would you like to go through those ideas that we presented in the board packet?
Yes, we will. Good afternoon, board members. There are three key items that we'd like to do. Number one, as Director Chan mentioned, the formation of the ad hoc committee, and then the three kind of key items that have been kind of developed here are, number one is the possibility of doing a renaming of facilities, specifically the renaming of this boardroom and the TRC to reflect Director Patterson's kind of overall commitment to training and development for staff. The potential name of that would be the William Bill Patterson Board and Training Resource Center. That would also include formation of some type of commemoration for him that would appear on the outside of the facilities here. The second is thinking about our workforce development programming, specifically the renaming of the Peralta Cohort Program to reflect, once again, his commitment to workforce development and the formation and the development of employees here. The name of that would be the William Patterson Peralta Cohort Program. This would really align with his overall leadership development and his commitment to the cultivation of leaders here at the district. And finally, the employee recognition for community engagement. Again, guessing that Director Patterson was so involved in civil rights and in community engagement overall, the item would be to take one of our employee excellence awards and actually name that after Director Patterson to recognize any employee who would demonstrate dedication to outreach, dedication to community service, whether directly through the district or in their personal lives. And that will be a nomination process, which we would explore further if that becomes the selected option. So those are the three key items that we are considering here. And again, that will be for the ad hoc committee to discuss and to determine exactly what to do. Again, we've drafted some general guidelines that can be also reviewed by the committee as well for renaming of facilities, and those would be the items that would be entertained with this item.
Director Lewis.
Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity, especially because Director Odie is up, to want to say we started this process actually shortly after Bill died. And that it was without question that Bill Patterson set the ceiling. But as part of the process and discussion about what things to consider, guidelines started to come up, the things that we were looking at going forward so that there would be clarity. Just so some folks know, and I really want to speak on Director Odie's behalf, if he hopes, because he felt very strongly, even the things that we had gelled on and shared with staff back and forth, he still felt it was not sufficient to really honor Bill Patterson in the fashion in which he served the community. And he wanted to share that and share that in a very strong fashion. So again, while I think, just to stress, we appreciate all that's been done and the manner in which East Bay MUD staff does everything with great thoughtfulness and how we move forward, still no question as to, I think, the three things that we've gelled on and that this board has discussed, or will be discussing, are things we thought tied in directly to his contribution, but that are by no means really, I think, where folks wanted to go. And Director Odie really wanted to see this, our boardroom named after him. So I just wanted to share that since Jim kind of stepped out, because it was very, very important to him.
So what we have before us today is two pieces, and we can decide on the proposal that's been made for Director Patterson, right, as well as the ad hoc committee. So we're going to appoint an ad hoc committee to develop guidelines for future naming and renaming, and then the proposal to honor Director Patterson. Do we have any public comments on this item? Or other questions from the board?
No public comment at the moment?
Okay. We need 3 volunteers to serve on the ad hoc committee, which is a time-limited service, but one that we would hope gets concluded by the second meeting in January?
I would hope so, and then I'm hoping by the second meeting in January, we can bring the recommended guidelines for the board to adopt.
Right. So do I have volunteers? Director Lewis, Director Smith, and Director Katz. I would like to reserve the opportunity for Director Odie to be on the committee, given his engagement in the discussion that's gone on. So, Director Katz, are you willing to
that's fine,
step
yeah.
aside if Jim wants to take that on?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion and a second to appoint Director Lewis, Director Smith, and either Director Katz or Director Odie to the ad hoc committee? Is that okay, Derek? Okay. I'd need a motion and a second.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Gomez. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then, is there, does anybody know whether Director Odie is going to rejoin us or not?
I can check if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like him to be able to vote on this if he's, Oh. Oh, okay, he may not be able to rejoin us. It's a weird day.
So Director Odie, well, first, on the first one, he indicated he would like to be on the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
But he cannot come in for this voting on the renaming.
Okay,
And then maybe to be, just to reiterate on what we're proposing is to rename the boardroom and the training
TRT.
center after Director Patterson, rename the Peralta cohort program after Director Patterson, and then to create a civic engagement award for, in honor of Director
Employee.
Patterson for employees.
and just one clarification I had on that is whether it was, if there's one employee or employee or employees?
Well, I mean, we haven't gone through
I know you
all
haven't
those
created the
details
award yet,
because
but-
we wanted to hear from the board whether or not you supported this concept before.
We were not doing the boardroom.
No, that's part of the, that's why I was a little confused
Okay.
about what you were saying.
Right,
Um,
since we've been going back and forth.
Quick question, just clarifying, the TRCs in this building?
Yes, this
Okay,
TRC.
yeah, because we have,
We have several
Multiple.
training center, yeah, but it'd be this training center.
okay,
TRC here.
okay.
Yeah, I very supportive of naming one of the rooms, you know, and I think the boardroom is something I'd like to kind of see a complete policy for the whole district for. I don't have that reservation for the training room. But I think just naming the boardroom seems like a bigger event, and I'd be more comfortable with a policy for that.
Like, I can give you the thought, at least behind the boardroom, what the impetus was really to make sure that every time we met, that Bill's name was on our notices and what have you. So that's why that's always been the initial, I think, request, and then these other things kind of got in. So that's why I was saying Director Odie and I think were more in favor of the boardroom, and then all this other stuff got put in, so we were confused. So is
Let me
there-
just
is
ask
the
Director Katz if he's going to vote no on the item if it includes the boardroom.
Well, no, I think Director Lewis made a great explanation for why naming the boardroom carries significant meaning. It almost makes the naming of the training resource center sort of as kind of a, you know, that actually looks different now. I think the boardroom is more appropriate. So, you know, I think it's, I would have preferred that we had a clear explanation in the staff report and a complete policy before doing this, but I do want to see the boardroom named.
I'd like to make a motion, I guess I'm gonna separate this out. I'd like to move that we name the boardroom after former Director Bill Patterson.
And not the other things?
I'd like to separate it. I'd like to do that and then come back to
Do
the other.
each of the others, or just come back to that with the ad hoc committee's report?
Maybe we do that, but let's name it.
Okay,
I'd like
so I'm hearing a motion to rename the boardroom in honor of former Director William Patterson, and that in addition to identifying criteria for the future naming of facilities, et cetera, that they also make a recommendation on how else to honor Director Patterson, including the things that have been proposed.
I will accept that as the motion.
I'd second it.
Okay. On my cheat sheet, those two things are separated, but I don't see any reason why they need to be.
No, yeah, well, you've already voted on the ad hoc committee. so-
Right, well, so the motion, though, is to honor Director Patterson by renaming the boardroom with his name, and for the ad hoc committee to make recommendations as to additional ways to honor Director Patterson's contribution.
After establishing the criteria for renaming.
And establish the, yeah.
Got
all
it.
of that.
So can we, I just want to restate that for the record, for the second part. That the motion is to rename the boardroom for William Bill Patterson. And the ad hoc committee will determine the criteria and the guidelines for renaming facilities. And in doing that, we'll also identify additional ways to honor William Bill Patterson.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay. So we have a motion by Director Lewis, seconded by Director Smith. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 5-2,
0.
1 absence. 5-0 with 1 absence. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Moving on to the general manager's report. In your packet is the summary of committee meetings and workshops for the last 6 months, and then the forecast for the next 6 months. I'll share with you that we do have a very busy start to the next year. We have 3 workshops planned. We have the Urban Water Management Plan workshop in January. Then we'll have our mid-cycle budget workshop in February. This is a little earlier than we would typically do it, but we feel that's important because there's a lot of items to discuss with the budget. And then we're going to do a customer assistance workshop in March, and this is something we haven't done a full workshop in quite some time, and heard requests to do that. And so that's in your packet. Also in your packet is a monthly report. I highlighted at the last board meeting, I'll just highlight again. If you look at the consumption to date, it's 168.9 million gallons per day versus last year at 176.7 MGD. That's a 4.4% difference. Last month, that difference was 1.5% less. So it's growing, but I expect now that we're heading into the winter months, hopefully it'll stabilize and not continue to grow, but it hasn't shrunk. If you look at our billed consumption, is just shy of $300 million, which is, I'll start with a positive, 2.4% more than the revenue last year, but that's because we raised the rates. What's more important is to look at how that compares with the budget. And it's $9.4 million less than budget, or 3% below budget. So, water sales, as we know, we had a cooler first half of the year, so our water sales is the biggest part of our revenue on the water side, and so we are down on sales and we are down on revenue. So sorry to bring some bad news to you at the end of the year, but it's just want to make sure that's on your radar. Finally, at your places is the Speakers Bureau, and that's the end of my reports.
Clifford, at what point does that number become a big, we're 3% off? Was it at 5%? Is it 4.5%? I mean, when
Yes.
do you start to say, okay, this isn't just, within our wiggle room?
I mean, I would say right now it's within the wiggle room, so to speak, but it does mean that we're going to provide some additional updates to the board on how we're going to just manage costs for the rest of the year, because we just want to be a little cautious going into the year. The winter time, as you're well aware, whether it's a dry year or a wet year, it's about the same demand. So we'll see. We can hope for an early rebound, a warm spring, wet winter, warm spring, and see demands increase. But given the past, that's probably not going to be the case. But we're watching the budget carefully, and I'm managing costs very carefully.
Can I ask a related question? So I remember that we were purposely trying to be conservative with our assumptions when we were crafting the budget as to water sales and consumption. And it sounds like even our conservative approach didn't turn out to be conservative enough. So I'm just curious how we're going to plan for future budget cycles, given this.
Yeah, we plan conservatively for water sales, but I mean, keep in mind that that conservative projection is an assumption over multiple years. So, just like we don't want to get too excited that water sales are down a little bit, likewise, if water sales were higher, we don't want to get too excited to say, oh, we have a lot of money, because, that can change year to year. So we projected a, modest 0.5% growth in water sales. We're not seeing that right now. But again, for me, this is a multi-year, managing the budget. But what you don't want to do is 2 or 3 years down the line, just spent and realize I can't make up that difference. So we just have to watch the budget over multiple years.
Okay, there are other items for future consideration. Please submit them to me and the general manager. We're now on to director comments. I'll go first. I don't know if anybody else is attending, but I will be attending the Siesta Valley Open House on Saturday afternoon, which is Siesta Valley, i.e. former Cal Shakes site, to see what they have planned, and hopefully others will participate. And I just want to say, as the last meeting of the year, that I've very much appreciated serving as president. It's not been without its challenges, but it also has had the opportunity to bring all of these wonderful new board members, into the space. And I feel thrilled to work with such a high caliber of people. So thank you all.
I can go next. I echo your sentiments, President Young, and I want to also thank you for your service this past year as our president. I know it wasn't easy at times, and you led us through some tough times this past year. So I want to thank you for that and all the extra time and effort that it took. As far as things that I've done lately, I continue to participate in Leadership San Ramon Valley. I was a guest panelist on a Diablo Valley College Business Beyond the Classroom Business and Sustainability class. That was really fun. I attended the Aqua Conference in San Diego last week. I attended several workshops, one on building leadership durability, using shared data to deliver smarter service, improving the Bay Delta water accounting, shifting federal landscape, and there was a nice recognition in the main hall for former Director Patterson as well. As you heard earlier, I attended DERWA last night, and on the 15th, I will be providing an EBMUD update along with Contra Costa Water District Director to the Pleasant Hill City Council meeting. And then I will see you all in January. So happy holidays to everyone.
Mine is pretty brief. Just want to say that I am happily wishing great birthday wishes to a former employee here, my mother. Today is her 81st birthday.
Happy birthday, Mom.
And nothing to report?
I have nothing to report. I just want to hope and wish, the best, a prosperous, happy, and safe new year for everyone. I want to echo what a pleasure and honor it's been to serve on this board. I think serving on this board has been unique in that it was that sweet spot. They say, you're in the right place if you're somewhere where you feel you serve and you make a difference, but you also leave having learned something new. And in that situation, whether it be from my fellow board members, the staff, the union, I'm telling you, when we go out, I can't tell you, sometimes we go and visit places, and I'm so impressed and honored to see what East Bay Mud workers do. So thank you for having made this such an incredible opportunity to serve.
Yep, thank you, East Bay Mud people. We are now through next time we'll do it a little bit differently. We're going to adjourn this portion of the regular meeting, and while some of us might wish to reassemble in 15 minutes, we're actually going to be reassembling at 3:15 to continue the regular business meeting in the large training conference center, which might be called something else by the next time we use it, to conduct a crisis communications training. And this portion of the regular business meeting will be conducted in person only. A Zoom webinar will not be available. Following that communications training, the board will be on vacation December 10th, 2025 to January 12th, 2026, and our next regular Board of Directors meetings will be held at 1:15 on Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. So this portion of this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
seasons